Thanks for joining us today for this CaFÉ webinar. Hope you're all doing well and safe in these very interesting times. In today's webinar, I will be going over the final steps for completing the call hosting process on CaFÉ. These are the things you will do after the jury process is complete and when you're ready to start taking your event or show out of CaFÉ and into your gallery, online exhibit, public art project, whatever it is you are working on. So the key items we will be discussing today are notifying the jury results to the artists, downloading information using reports, allowing artists to archive their entries, and archiving the call on your account. These are all the steps that you'll be taking after your jury process is complete. I will go to our demo call here. So our juror here has scored all of the entries and they are finished doing everything. The jury is still in process, which I'll talk about later. But if you go to the events management page, you'll see here that we have our entries sorted into the not invited and the invited statuses. So this is where you'll want to be after your jury process is done. Here I'll make an important note that you'll want to make sure no entries are left in the receive status or that you have not set aside and forgotten about any of the entries that are in some other statuses like other or reviewed. You'll want to make sure you're notifying all of your artists and not leaving anyone wondering about the status of their application. So as I'll show you later, we'll be making their statuses visible in CaFÉ, so you want to avoid any confusion for anyone left with an other status or reviewed status. They might not know what that means. So make sure no one is left behind and that you have your entries organized and sorted like we have here. So the first thing you should do after having the entries sorted is to notify the artists. As I mentioned in webinars before, it's best practice to notify everyone, not just the invited artists, because you'll want to follow through with all who have put in time, effort, and often money into applying to your call. Okay, so to email artists, go to the Events Communication tab and select your call. You'll see the statuses grouped here, just as in the box that you see on the Events Management tab. You'll select the status you want to send your email to. You'll be sending one to your invited batch and one to your not invited batch. So for the purposes of today, we're just going to show the not invited group. So you'll click the status and click select. And from here, the email form will pop up. So you'll fill out these forms, making sure to leave a reply to email address. And this is really important because if they reply to this email, it's a do not reply email address being sent as the from address. So you'll want to make sure that you include a reply to. You can CC or BCC anyone you want, and you can also choose to send yourself a copy. Include your subject as well. So I have some demo messages here. I'm just going to copy and paste this into the message form where the body text box is. So you'll want to write it or copy and paste it in here. Since you're sending to an entire batch of artists, make sure that the greeting in the message is generic. When sent, the emailer will populate the name of the artist along with their entry title and status. I'll show you an example of this in a moment. So you'll want to include any message that you want to have for the artists, like thanking them for their submissions and letting them know that they were not invited if this is the not invited batch, or invited if they were. And include any information about the event. You can also attach a small file here in any of the accepted formats if you need to attach more info or paperwork. So once you've finished editing your email, click Preview. Here is where you'll see the preview that the system will auto-populate the information. So you'll see the categories here, but it will auto-populate the artist's information. So their username, the category if you have a category. It'll include here, this is where it'll show them the name of the image, the name of the art sample that they included, and it'll start the message off with their first and last name. So if your call was set up as jury by artwork, where each piece was separated into its individual entry, and let's say an artist had one piece invited and one piece not invited, that artist will receive 2 emails. That's because one of their pieces are in the invited batch and one is in the not invited batch. But their artwork title here will list the status, so in their email, they'll be able to see the name of the piece that was invited and the name of the piece that was not invited. And then another thing I'll point out is that unless an artist is receiving different emails for their invited and not invited entries, like I just mentioned, the system will automatically dedupe emails, so only one email is sent to each artist per batch. So if you notice, the email was sent to a number of artists less than the batch. So we have 13 in our not invited status, but 6 emails being listed here. That just means that some artists have multiple pieces in the not invited batch. So you're sending less number of emails because it dedupes, and it'll list all of the entries for that batch, for that status in this email here. So just something to keep in mind if you're worried that you're not sending it to everybody. Okay, so from here on this page, you can go ahead and send it. You can save a draft. You can go back and make changes. If you save a draft, it will be listed just under that Events Communication tab. You can either create or you can see the draft was right here. Okay, so to view the sent emails, you'll do so by just choosing one of the applications from the batch of artists. So you'll go to Events Management. Let's say I just sent that email. You'll click on their application ID number, which is right here. This will pull up their artist citation page. And if you scroll down, there's the communication section that will list all of the different emails that was sent. So while you can't see all of the sent emails at once in one place, if you see the email is sent to one of the people that you choose from the table, you can assume that it was successfully sent to the entire batch. Another thing you can do is run an Events Communication Bounce Report. This is found under the Reports tab. You go here. Under Events Communication Bounce Report, you can select any dates, probably the date that you sent it. I'll just kind of give ourselves a big window. Choose the call that you sent it to. And this will pull up any of the emails that did not send correctly. So these are just all the bounced emails. They're usually due to incorrect email addresses on the artist account. Maybe they're outdated. If you don't see any emails listed here, you can be confident that the emails were sent to everybody. So this will tell you, if you know diagnostic codes, it'll tell you that too. But you can be sure that if there's nothing listed here, then you did it right. The next step that you'll need to take after emailing the artist, which let's assume now that we've emailed both the invited artists and the not invited artists, the next step is to set your jury status to complete. So we ask you to set this status after you notify the artist, because once you change this jury status to complete, it will make the status visible to the artist on the My CaFÉ entries page. This gives you enough time to make sure you have everything sorted. There's no confusion between the artists or, with any final decisions, that you're ready to make it published. So I will show you how this looks actually to our demo artist. I will go ahead and log into here. So you can see here on the list, this is in the artist account on their My CaFÉ entries page. This is the call that we're looking at here, and you can see that the status is listed as jury round 1 in progress. This is because our jury status is still technically in progress, even though they may have seen an email come from us. So this is what it looks like. And then once we go back here to the jury administration page and we set our jury status to complete and click save, when I go back to here and I refresh the page, you'll see that all of a sudden the statuses are now visible. And you'll see that they have 1 not invited and 1 invited. Setting the jury status to complete kind of opens that curtain to their statuses. Best practice to let the artist know first so they know what to expect, and to give you space to thank them for applying and make sure everything's in order. You also don't want to forget this step because it gives the artist the chance to confirm which pieces were invited and which ones were not invited if they had multiple submissions. So while I showed you how this is included at the top of the email, it's always good to allow artists to be able to go to their page to clearly see which ones and confirm the statuses. All right, so that's the next step that you have to complete before finishing up. Now that you've finished these steps to notify the artist of the results and setting your jury status to complete, there are a few things you may want to collect from CaFÉ before you take your event to its next stages. So these next few tips I'm going to give you are certainly not required steps, but they may be handy to know what you have available to you. So first, if you need your invited artist's works, you will want to request a download link of the high resolution images. So simply put, if you request these images, which we can do for just your invited status or any of the other statuses or all of them if you need, we can send you this download link. So to do this, all you need to do is submit us a ticket under the ticket tab here. Under the type, you'll just choose image request. And in the message, just let us know that you need the images from the status that you need. So just let us know which status. And if you're still in your jury process and need the images for a blind jury, you can still let us know to not include the artist names in the files. When requested, we will send you a link to download a zip file of these images. If you're conducting an online exhibition, this feature can be really helpful to get the full-size images ready for exhibition on your website, Instagram page, or other. Some also use these images for labels, catalogs, or anything else that might be needed to reference them for. Matt, you ask, our jury process was public while we were judging. We didn't use the online jury process. Does that make all of our statuses visible? The answer to your question is that the statuses are visible if your jury status is set to not yet started or complete. The only way that the statuses are not visible is if you set it to in progress. I hope that's answering your question. If you don't use CaFÉ to jury, then you'll maybe still want to set your jury status to in progress. Let's say you're moving them around just manually from the events management tab and you're changing the statuses. If your jury status is not yet started, those will be visible to the artist. So you'll just want to make sure you set it to in progress even if you're not using this function. All right, so the second bit of information you may want to download from CaFÉ before your event are the media information reports. We have several different reports that you can use to take the applications offline, organize contact info, and keep track of the artwork. I will now go over these reports to give you an idea what is available. We'll start in the events management tab, make sure our call is selected. And so you'll first select which status you want. Let's just say I need the contact information for the invited artist. So I'm just going to click invited. You can also click view all. At the top right of this table here, you'll see the two options for the applications, which are download XLSX and download PDF. And there's different options under each one. Under download XLSX, you can download spreadsheets of the contact information, application answers, and media information. So contact information will give you a spreadsheet of the artist's names, mailing address, email, phone, and website. Application answers will give you the artist's basic info and email, but will also list their answers to your custom form questions if you included any. And then media information here is a spreadsheet that lists the artwork details that the artist includes with their images, such as medium, dimensions, price, and year completed. Like I said, these reports are all downloaded as a spreadsheet, which may be helpful if you need to sort information or quickly retrieve emails as a list. Under download PDF here, you have two options, application and media inventory. So I'll go ahead and just show you a couple of these. The application PDF shows each application on its own page along with the thumbnail images. So this one is a little bit longer, so it's basically the artist citation page that you see, but in PDF form. And then I'll go to the different ones. This is helpful if you may need to go offline to review applications. If you're at the end of the call process, you might not need this report unless you want to view any custom form questions that pertain to your event. All right. The media information, or the media inventory list under Download PDF, is the media information I talked about before. However, this will show you the thumbnail images in grid format. So this is what the media inventory list looks like. This is often helpful when hanging a show or having the words delivered for the exhibit, because you can quickly reference the pieces using these thumbnails and check off the ones you have ready. Some also like to use this to make labels because it has all the information with the image thumbnail all at once. You can easily see everything. All right, so that's the media inventory list. So I won't spend too much time on this next report, but I want to point out that it may be handy at this point to make sure you download the income breakdown report. We've gone over this in detail in many of our recent webinars, but just to review, you can view and download this by going to Reports and Income Breakdown. I'd recommend you download the report for the entire run of your call so that you have all of the transaction information handy for any current or future accounting needs. So once you select your dates and your call, you'll click Run Report. And at the bottom, you can click Download XLXX, and once the report processes, you can click the name of the file to start the download. So that's really handy if you're collecting entry fees and you want to keep track and have these transactions on record. Even though it'll always be available to you as long as you have your account active with us at CaFÉ, but you might as well pull it after each call. Now that you have the information, the reports that you may need for the event, you're pretty much ready to finish everything up on CaFÉ. There are a couple more settings though that you'll need to change or check on before you do, which is allowing artists to archive their applications. If you've done all the previous steps I've mentioned so far, you would actually have already done this, but you want to double check just to make sure. So in order to allow artists to archive their entries from their CaFÉ account, which is important because without doing so, they can't modify or remove their images from their portfolio, you need to check two settings. And just so you know, since I'm here, this is the demo artist page again, and this is the option to archive. Obviously, this one up here is still in progress and you can't archive it, but artists usually have tons and tons and tons of entry on this page, and archiving them allows them to keep this page nice and clean. They can view their past entries separately, and it just kind of makes for a better experience for them. So that's why you might see artists emailing you, asking you to set it so that they can archive their entries. And that's what that means. So these two settings. The first setting you need to check on is that jury status. You just need to make sure it's complete. Since you've hopefully already done this, you just got to make sure that it's changed. Secondly, you'll want to go to the call editor. So from events management, you'll go to call editor, and under that event information tab, check to make sure the do not allow artists to archive setting is set to disabled. This setting actually automatically changes when you change your jury setting to complete, but you want to confirm that here. That automatic was a new feature of ours, so you want to make sure it's functioning and that it automatically changes it to disabled. So those are the two settings that you want to make sure are set so that the artist can archive their entries. Again, it's this one here and then the jury status to complete. All right. So at this point, you've done everything you need to do to wrap up your call on CaFÉ. While some administrators like to keep their call listed under current events for a while in case they need to come back to it, this is that current event list under here. If you're ready to put the call away, and move on, the next thing you can do is ask us to archive your call. Archiving your call allows you to keep your list of current calls, current. This way you can stay organized. All you need to do is send us another help ticket here, or you can just shoot us an email. And you can ask us to archive your call. Just make sure you indicate the full name of the call so we know which one to archive. Make sure all your settings are changed, that you're ready to go before you ask us to archive. Archiving here, once we've done it, you'll see it under the archived event list. And the thing about archiving is that you can still access some of the data and the information from the call after you've archived it. There's something that you should keep in mind, which I'll go over. So to see your archived call, you can choose it from this drop-down menu here, and it'll load the same information. It'll load the same table. This is a different call, obviously, but it has everything where I left it. You can still download any of the reports or the spreadsheets. However, the one thing that you should know is that if any of the artists archived their entries, like we talked about, that means the information and the images on their applications will be removed from these reports. Not all artists archive their entries, so you may end up with some of the info still there, but it might not be a complete report since some of them will have archived them. So it's a good idea to download what you need ahead of time, although if you need to go back and try to find information, you know that it's some of it will at least still be there. You also won't be able to request an image download link of the high-res images from an archived call. So make sure if you want those that you ask for them before you ask us to archive. And then that's pretty much it. When your call is archived and you have all the info you need, you're officially ready to move on from the CaFÉ process and get to the exciting part of putting together your event. When you're ready for a new call, you know where to find us. That concludes that portion. Now I'm going to open it up for questions. Matt, you ask, what does it mean when you make disabled your front-end status in the event management editor? The front-end status is essentially your live or not live setting. Front end is the call listings page, so if you have your front end status as active, then that means it's visible on the CaFÉ call listings page that is publicly available to everyone who goes to our website. There's a couple exceptions. Even if it's active here, it may not be published on that site for a couple of reasons. The obvious one is that the deadline is passed. So if the deadline is in the past and your front end status is active, that means that your call is not on the page. The other exception is if you have an invitational password here. If you have that active, it's technically not public on the call listings page. Not everyone can find it unless you have that passcode, but your front end is still active. But front end status active means live and disabled means unlive. So unfortunately, one of the things that many folks are running into is having to cancel their calls or postpone them. So let's say that happens to you, unfortunately. The first thing you'll want to do is actually set this front-end status to disabled, so that way artists aren't able to apply when you know that your call or event is canceled. All right, Danae, hello. Do we need to change the status when the call closes, or does that automatically happen? By status, I think you mean jury status when the call closes, or front-end status. The front-end status, you don't need to change it to disable when the call closes. When your deadline passes, it automatically takes it off of the call listings page, so you don't really have to worry about it. But if you're concerned, feel free to take it to disabled. That's not a big deal. Essentially, this does conclude our webinar of wrapping up calls on CaFÉ. And I hope you've learned some helpful tips and feel more confident in the process of closing out and wrapping everything up with your calls. But I appreciate you joining us today, and we'll send a webinar recording to everyone who registered. So look out for that for future reference. And be sure to join us next month